There's so much love and light on the other side. It's not fear, it's love on the other side. Love is the biggest thing. I remember these angelic beings around me, and they were so tender. And that's what it is that there's love and tenderness on the other side.
I'm Deborah Jarvis, and you are listening to The Final Say, Conversations with People Facing Death. This is the podcast where you can get comfortable talking about death and learn some things about life from people who are facing death. In this episode, I'm talking to Juliana Fodera, who has died 21 times. The first 5 of those times were the day she was born because she was born with Noonan syndrome. Noonan syndrome is a genetic disorder that can cause all different kinds of problems, so I'll let Juliana tell you a bit about that.
I was born in 1981, so it was well before all the advanced technology of being able to diagnose things in utero. I had to be resuscitated 5 times the day I was born. My dad loves telling the story about how he was in the room when I was delivered and they flipped me upside down. It's a girl. We need to go take care of her. And off I went. I had a lot of medical complications. I had septicemia. Both my lungs were collapsed. Heart stuff, kidney stuff, everything just kind of went awry. With Noonan's, it's such a game of roulette because you're not really sure how it's going to impact the baby. Not every baby makes it. It impacted me really physically more than anything else. And the emotional, psychological impact came with the physical impact because of all the hospitalizations. As I grew older, some things sorted themselves out. Some things, my heart got more complicated. I had to have my right kidney finally removed when I was 29 because it just crapped out. It wasn't until college I got more active. I was dancing the 5 rhythms. I was walking on campus. And I noticed one day I'm walking up the steps to my class and I'm like, man, I'm tired. And I felt like I was going to black out. And I'm like, all right, I'm just out of shape. So I go to class, nothing happens. Come to find out I had 4 atrial septal defects. So they go in, I got to have emergency. It was back surgery. I remember asking, okay, so what percentages? The ex-surgeon, beautiful, beautiful man. He said to me, Juliana, I'm not going to lie, it's 20% of you having a stroke, 50% of you having a heart attack, and there's a 50% chance we're not going to be able to resuscitate you. Okay. I woke up with a very foul mouth after the open heart surgery. I basically woke up, lifted up the sheet, and I said, where's my dick? I want to see my dick. And my mom is laughing. The nurse anesthetist is laughing. The student nurse looks terrified. And my father's laughing and trying to calm me down.
Lots of people wake up with delirium after anesthesia. Not everyone wakes up with that exact question. However, I thought it was best to probably move on from that. So I asked Juliana, when she wakes up every day, does she think about death? And if so, what are her spiritual beliefs around death?
Natural medium. So I already communicate with spirit. It's like the joke, the running gag in my family is that I got 1 foot in this world and 1 foot in the spirit world. I've had a parallel experience where my physical body has been here. And after I had the open heart surgery, the next day I had a grand mal seizure. I completely flatlined. I coded and helped them resuscitate me. So while that was happening, I was on the other side and my uncle met me. And my dad's brother, who was 44 when he died, and he died of a heart attack. So we're in the hospital cafeteria and he's sitting there. His hair was braided and he was in a hospital gown and he met me with a glass of bourbon. And I was like, is this it? And I'm in my hospital gown and I'm like, oh my God, and we were, come on, man, let me come through. I was like, I want to come play. It was like, basically my physical body was in the physical world and my spirit body was in the spiritual realm. And so I kind of found the exit and I was like, all right, I'm going to escape somehow. And as I was running, I felt this insane pressure and I was like, I can't catch my breath. And I felt myself be breathed back into my body and back into and it's a very painful experience.
Really?
Yeah, it's happens is you feel your breath hitch. Like it is of where I was in the spiritual realm, I could feel myself go back in. I made it to
Bummed to come
levels.
back into your body, or were you happy to be back on this side?
I was like, I couldn't figure out what my mission was. And my uncle said to me, you got to go back for your dad. You got to go back for Peter. You got to go back for my brother. Right. I was like, I will go back. So when I woke
Wow.
up, I was like, what am I still doing here?
This was really intriguing to me, so I asked Juliana if she felt like her personality was intact.
Yeah, it was very much
Okay.
so when I experienced parallel existence, parallel universe. My physical body was in the physical world. My spirit body was in the spirit world. So I was very well aware of my entire being. My personality was intact. I was intact. So it was like everything, there was nothing disoriented or disconnected. And a guy who met me, he was really young. And he said, come on, we got to go catch the next train. And I was like, what are you talking about? And we were running toward the train, and all at once I felt my breath hitch. And I went, ow, I can't breathe. And he goes, come on. And I felt myself be resuscitated. I actually
Ah,
watched myself be resuscitated. And it was like back in the body, out, back in the body, out, back in the body. And I was like, I can't breathe. And in the spirit world, I couldn't breathe because my spirit was being breathed back in the body.
that time it was a train. So, what other modes of
Mhm.
transportation have you experienced?
11, I had complications from a very complex urinary surgery, and it was of no fault of anybody that did the surgery. Started to hemorrhage, and I watched myself bleed out. So, was staying in the room with me at the time. My dad was, Mom, I think I peed myself, and she pulled back the sheet, and it was just my life force. So she down and passed out. They came in to do my vitals, and in that moment, I was 11 years old. To them, go take care of her. Don't worry about me. Let them check her over because I couldn't deal with the idea of this doing her in
Right.
and
And
me
so, at that
taking
point, did you cross over or?
started to leave. I started to leave. I actually felt my spirit started to go. It was like kind of limbo weird. Like I left, came back in, and it was like a lift off. It was more like a physical was like trying to hold, and it was spirit was like slipping out, and my body was like, okay, wait, don't go yet.
You walk around now in your daily
Mhm.
life, do you ever think, wow, I could drop dead any minute? I mean, do you feel like you're facing death every
I
day?
Oh, I could go in my sleep. My heart could just kick
Sure.
out. My kidney often think like, wow, what do I leave behind if I die? Brother and my dad. Our mom passed away in 2018,
Mm.
cancer. And that was not an easy thing. The beauty in it though was that I was able to be a part of her care. So to be able to give care to her back after she did so much was such a beautiful, like, as it was, and as challenging and as painful as it was to watch her, it was the idea of being able to give back to this woman that gave so much.
Having crossed over several times and having it be kind of wonderful,
Mhm.
do you think it's made you more fearless in your life?
It's made me appreciate life, and it's made me want to live the best quality of life possible. It's wanted me to stay as present in the moment as possible. It's one of these things where it's like, oh, okay, so I can keep myself safe. Let's see what we can do. And I've made a life for myself. And that's what it is. It's like I love life, like living a lot longer than all my doctors ever anticipated.
And where
I want to make the most out of my life. I don't want to be on my deathbed going, I really regret X, Y, and Z. I
Yeah.
want it to be like, I think it did pretty good. Like, that's where I
So
want to be at. I want to be at the
Anna had multiple surgeries, and I know from talking to many patients and having surgery myself that it's traumatic to have any kind of surgery. As my brother in law, the surgeon, always says, there's no such thing as a small surgery. Because even if you're having surgery to save your life, your body remembers it as trauma.
In 2015, they finally diagnosed me with medical PTSD. They were like, Juliana, you probably had this since you were a baby. And I'm like, well, that makes sense because I will taste anesthesia. I could hear like clinking of like medical instrument. I would like have these like memories. And I'm like, what is going on? And then the weirdest thing would happen. And this would happen class in high school, in class in college, and it still happens to this day where I will feel gaping holes in my body, like I'm open, and my heart is one of the biggest spots. So it's been working with a trauma therapist because it's not that I don't trust the medical profession, it's just that I've had them say everything is fine and then turn around and I'm sitting on an OR table. He's been, working through a lot of being manhandled, being like multiple people just touching me and like futzing with me, and having your dignity surrendered at a very early age is very, very profound. I had a lot of abdominal pelvic surgeries.
Mm.
So I had people in places I really didn't want people in places in, but because they had to fix what they were fixing, I had to, kind of surrender to the process.
Yeah.
And trauma specialist I'm working with has been beautiful with me. She's really helped me to work through a lot of stuff. And those of us that have been through extreme circumstances as children and are aging, especially those of us with Noonan syndrome, and our parents have watched us have to be intubated, extubated, drains, tubes, all these surgeries, all these procedures, dressing changes, pain. It's traumatizing for the parents. It's traumatizing for the family.
Yeah.
When I was born, my brother was going to sibling classes and he couldn't wait to be a brother. Like it was like I was like the best things in sliced bread that was about to come. Let's get home and your sister is very sick, but the doctors are taking care of her. And they actually brought my brother to the hospital to see me in
Mm.
the incubator.
Mm.
And I just could imagine how scared that must have been for him. It's I've always felt like not a burden, but an impingement on everything because like my health has disrupted so many things. Like it's disrupted vacations. It's disrupted, you know, it disrupted the family dynamic.
I asked Juliana about her spiritual beliefs, what she was raised to believe, and what she believes now.
I'm from an Italian Catholic background. So it wasn't until I made my confirmation and I started to just not agree what a lot of the church was talking about at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a lot of like, you had to go to church. God didn't hear your prayers. God didn't like bad behavior. God, and I'm like, it's not the God I believe in. Like, what?
Right.
Why is it got to be all men? Like, where are the women in this picture? Where's
And
in one of the classes? And it was said, have to be in the church because otherwise God won't hear your prayers. And I go and I ask the priest because this was the catechism teacher. This wasn't the priest that said that. And I said, I got a question. All those times I'm praying from the hospital bed as a sick kid, God didn't hear it. He said, no, Juliana. He goes, we often go, the brothers often go for walks in the woods, and that's how we communicate with God. And I'm like, okay. I said, just a heads up, be careful what you're saying. And it was like, oh. And it was like, the difference between religion and spirituality is that religion is based on doctrine, where spirituality is based on spirit.
gives you the most joy in your day now?
Being gainfully employed.
Hmm.
It's this day and age, being somebody with a disability, the rate of disabilities who don't have a job is 80%. I'm actually a grants manager for a
Ah,
501c3 nonprofit that provides competitive and inclusive employment to people with disabilities.
mhm.
And we are known as the Prospector. We're located right here in Richfield, and we have the Prospector Theater and Prospector Popcorn. And we actively are working to just include people with disabilities in the workplace and show how important it is that everybody can work. Everybody deserves a chance at having a job and being a part of an active life. And I love my job because I'm educating and advocating for something I feel very passionate about. It's more about showing the world how capable people with disabilities are, when given a chance, and
Mhm.
they don't look at their disability, but they look at their ability, and they look at actually what they can accomplish. And one of the things that I found is that I kept just excelling, and I didn't expect this to happen, but I'm actually using my degree in community health. Like, I'm applying some of the principles and some of the work I've done, and like, I just love what I'm doing. And I love it because it's getting to myself in a direction I didn't expect to go.
I asked Juliana what her greatest joy was, and then I also asked her what her biggest fear was.
His fear was being misunderstood. People think like I come off as having an attitude. Really, it's like sometimes it's like, oh, it's I'm dealing with a little bit of pain and that's why I'm cranky. Don't want to talk about the pain and I'm cranky and I'm sorry that it's coming out. I ask what my pain level is today.
Juliana's last question, man, that stopped me in my tracks. Have you ever considered my pain level? She was talking about her physical pain, but of course, we experience all kinds of pain: emotional, mental, spiritual. So I found myself thinking, what if the next time I find myself with someone who I think is cranky or annoying, instead of getting all judgy about them, I stopped and asked myself, I wonder what your pain level is today. And I think it would be just as helpful when I find myself being irritable or unforgiving to ask myself, what is my pain level today? Because softening toward ourselves makes it easier to soften to other people.
Is there anything else you want to say?
There's so much love and light on the other side. And there are people on the other side who have crossed before you. There are spirit guides. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of tenderness. And there are people who are crossing over at the same time as you in other places. So it's not like you're necessarily alone, because it's not fear, it's love on the other side. Like, love is the biggest thing. And death is just this shift of the actual substance of a person. So even though their physical isn't there anymore, their spirit is still very much alive. Be curious. If I can say anything, be curious, because it's not what you think it's going to be. It's not some scary, like, a grim reaper coming after you. And be open, be curious. Death is not to be feared. That's the biggest fault in our society, is that we're so afraid of, like, that's going to be it. And it's like, no, your spirit continues on. You have other work to do.
So here's my final say for today. Be curious. I think that's great advice, not just for facing death, but facing life. I mean, going into any situation open and curious, that pretty much guarantees that if there are any gifts to be had, we will be ready to receive them. I mean, what if we can just be curious in every situation instead of afraid and contracted, so we enter a situation with curiosity and wonder. And then I really do like that idea of wondering about someone's pain level when I'm about to judge them. And of course, checking in with myself about my own pain level. This has been The Final Say, Conversations with People Facing Death. Thanks for listening. This podcast is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Deborah Jarvis. And thanks to Blue Dot Sessions, who provides music. Deep gratitude to Juliana Fodera for giving her time and her heart to this episode. She works at Prospector Theater, which is a first-run movie theater and online popcorn business. Their website is prospectortheater.org, and I'll put a link up in the transcripts of this episode. Please feel free to hop over to thefinalsaypodcast.com and email me with feedback, questions, ideas, stories. Are you or do you know someone who's facing death and would like to be a guest? Let me know. Let me know what you thought of today's episode, or how you're doing, or what's up with you. And of course, I really appreciate you leaving a review wherever you get your podcast, because that helps a lot to get more people listening to these amazing stories. So thanks again for listening, and I hope you find beauty and joy in your day-to-day. And, I had my final say, but I'm going to let Juliana have the last word.
How am I going to go out? Like, is it going to be some stupid accident? Like I slip and fall in the shower and I'm like, God, I hope not. Because that would just be embarrassing after everything I've been through. And that's what does me in. There she is, slipped and fell in the shower,